So besides insecticides, which there are a lot of different classes of them that can kill insects, there's also uh, chemicals that kill weeds. So your definition of a weed and someone else's definition of a weed is totally different. Like for me, I don't mind dandelions in my front yard. They add nutrients to their soils. They do a lot to it, but to other people, those are weeds. So when you're doing agriculture, sometimes you don't want to have to do manual weeding. You know, if you have your own garden, you have to manually remove them. Sometimes it's just easier to put down a chemical. And like if you're doing a restoration project and you need to remove all of the current invasives into there, you use herbicides. I mean, this is a very common thing. You can take the herbicide and fire class where you learn how to handle these compounds. You put them on the very specific plants that you want to kill off, because you know we want to maybe either restore an area or we want to have agriculture, and so herbicides are a necessity that we also have to deal with. You can go to no-till and you'll see this around here. They're starting to have a lot more of that. It's where you plant without plowing. You leave some of the residual down on there. It chokes out the weeds, and this has been done since the 1960s. One of the chemicals that I really wanted to talk about was atrazine, and this is probably the most common used chemical around here since we are in the land of corn and soybeans. This is what we put down, a lot of atrazine, and I hope you guys, first thing you noticed was this little right here. What does that say? Yeah. So atrazine, it doesn't bioaccumulate like DDT does. It's moderately water soluble. It's found a lot in the Midwest. I mean, and if I show you guys this figure, this is atrazine uses in there, and look where we are. We're in the hot spot, right in this middle part here. If we added Iowa into this, it would just be, you know, these reds and purple colors too. So very high usage in our area. The LD50, which means lethal dose 50, it kills off 50% of the organisms that it deals with, is very, very high. We never get to that kind of high levels, but it has been linked to cancer and birth defects, and the MCL for it is 3 parts per billion. So you don't have a lot of this inside of your water, but it is, like I said, very commonly used throughout the entire Midwest. When we look throughout the entire United States, again, we're in this nice little hot red zone here. And so when we look at water and water quality issues, we have nitrates, phosphates as our problems here, and a lot of atrazine. This is something else that's commonly found inside of our water wells inside of here. There's other type of paraquat, which is used, this one was kind of interesting. It was used for a marijuana eradication campaign, and so it was sprayed onto what's called ditchweed. I don't know if you guys ever heard of ditchweed, but ditchweed, they were putting hemp in the area. They were growing it here, and then it got into the ditches, and so sometimes people will find it, and so they're trying to get it into there, and so this can be inside of some of the chemicals in there. But the one I really wanted to talk about was 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T. 2,4-D, more commonly referred to as Agent Orange. I did talk a little bit about this chemical and talk a little bit about that it's still being used. I mean, if you get your chem on and it says do not let your animals on your chem on, and you ask them what they're using, if you look at it, it is 2,4-D, which is this compound right here. Again, if you notice the carbon chloro bonds, that means that it is a man-made compound. It kills weeds. It is a really good thing at killing off vegetation. That's why people use a lot of 2,4-D to kill off weeds and cracks and in there. The MCL for 2,4-D is 0.7 ppm, or 70 parts per billion. We'll talk about 2,4,5-T here in a second. If you notice, it's 30 parts per quadrillion. It is so toxic. We'll talk about what 2,4,5-T is in just a second. But 2,4-D, like I said, was most commonly referred to as Agent Orange. So Agent Orange gets put down, so this was called Operation Ranch Hand. This was during the Vietnam War. Basically, we had two reasons why we were putting down 2,4-D inside of Vietnam. And it spread beyond the border. So this compound was also sprayed into Cambodia and into Laos too. In Cambodia, what was happening was, in Vietnam, was the Americans were like, well, okay, there's guerrilla warfare. So we need to be able to see where the enemy is. So if we remove the jungles in there, so you can see they would use these airplanes, they would spray it on top of the vegetation, and then it would remove the vegetation so that we could see through the very thick jungle covers that are in the area. So that was one of the two reasons why they did it. The second reason for doing it was that if they spray it on the food crops of the north, they could starve out the people of this area, and then they would have to come south in order to get food. And so they were spraying it not just on to remove vegetation for guerrilla warfare, they were also spraying it on food and food crops. It was called Agent Orange because of the sticker that was on top of it. There was also Agent Purple and Agent Blue. Agent Orange was 2,4-D, and it was a defoliant in there. And you could find concentrations of it. There are papers out there that still are finding it in Vietnam. There is, especially in the deltaic regions of the Mekong River. So the Mekong River comes out, and here's the deltaic regions in here. Down here in the south, where supposedly we had our strongholds, was in the south part of Vietnam, we still find 2,4-D inside of it. Someday I want to do an experiment and look for 2,4-D inside of Cambodia and Laos and see if it's in there. And as I talked before, this carbon chlorobond makes it not biodegradable. And so it persists in the environment. So Vietnam War was 50 years ago. We can still find this compound and its daughter products. So as this breaks down, it'll still go into there. It can be still found inside of the environment. Well, one of the problems that happened with Agent Orange, like I said, Agent Orange is still used today. 2,4-D, people use it in ChemLawn. And, if you are a pesticide, you're doing a chemical company. I had a student one year who's like, yeah, my dad owns a yard company, and he showed me the compounds that they were spraying out, and it was 2,4-dichlorophenol acetic acid in there. But what happened during Agent Orange that is unique is this creation of a dioxin. So what happened is Dow Chemical, and this is in Midland, Michigan, was making 2,4-D. So this is the compound 2,4-D. Well, they weren't having complete chemical reactions. So if you do organic chemistry, you have to have certain reactions happen to completion, and it wasn't happening. And so they were creating a polychlorinated dibenzodioxin. Okay, they were creating 2,4,5-T, and also creating 2,3,7,8 tetrachlorodibenzyl dioxin, or TCDD. It is so toxic. If you look over here, the MCL for 2,4,5-T is 30 parts per quadrillion. It was a chemical manufacturing issue. Hold on one second. I'm going to go get a picture of the chemical for you. So one of the main contaminants is this 2,4,6-TCDD, and if I click on this over here, you can see this is TCDD, 2,3,7,8 tetrachloride. So these are dioxins that were contaminants in Agent Orange, and so this was considered a really toxic chemical. Now, if we look at the way the structure is, and we look at it, we've got the chloro groups, we've got the benzes, we've got the oxygens here, and if I go back and I look at this compound here, here's the 2-chloro, here's the oxy. It's just this compound connected to another one is what happens with this compound. It's two of them connected to each other because this was in here, and this is really what caused a lot of the cancers, and it's extremely toxic to humans. This is the one that has that actually caused a lot of the birth defects. It is really toxic to humans. It is considered one of the most toxic substances known to man. In here in Vietnam and the United States, this caused birth defects, not just of the people in Vietnam, but for children born from Vietnam vets who were working with Agent Orange, which was contaminated with TCDD. So a lot of stillbirth, cleft palates. A friend of mine was born without part of an arm because his father was exposed to it. There is still cancer causes and everything. So this was a manufacturing defect because of Dow Chemical. And Dow Chemical example, where this was manufactured was in Midland, Michigan, part of it, and I used to live there, and they used to have what was called the tip of Owasso River, and we would find compounds of this in the river, of this dioxin. It was the problem was fixed, so they figured out how to get this out of it, because it was about 10 parts per million of all of the Agent Orange, or the 2,4-D, had this in there, and they figured out what their problem was. But the problem with this one is that it caused a lot of skin, birth defects, everything else. One of the really interesting ones is Time Beach, Missouri. It was a town of about 2,000 people, and what happened is some of the oils that the stuff, like I said, was just kind of like they couldn't use it for anything else, and then it got mixed into a waste stream. And when it got mixed into the waste stream, it got put onto the dirt roads of this town called Time Beach, Missouri in the 1980s to control road dust. Okay, so we don't do this anymore, but I remember when I was a kid in the 70s, we used to live on a dirt road, and all summer long they would oil the road. Yeah, so they would come through with waste oil and spray it all over the road to control dust. And then, you know, my mom was like, "You always hated walking on that." And I'm like, they're spraying oil all over the roads. Well, part of the oil that got into Times Beach, Missouri, got completely clogged up, and it killed they had to close down the whole town. Basically, the whole town was removed. They had to remove all of the people from the town. They had to clean up the entire town. I'll send you guys some information on it. I'll put that onto the Blackboard site. And so they had to remove it. Nowadays, because me being the kind of person I am into toxic places, wanted to go visit it, and it's right down the road. And from my parents used to live in Missouri, in St. Louis, and so I was like, "Hey, can we go drive out this place? You know, it's supposedly got signs that, you know, you're not allowed to." Well, they cleaned it all up. Now it's just a park. So not as exciting as I thought it was going to be, but it was one of the toxic places in the world because of this dioxin that was inside of it. So I put up on the Blackboard site, let's see if I can go here, content. There is a new thing called Times Beach, Missouri. It's a little 20-minute video for you to watch and hear about what happens when this kind of compound gets onto the environment, what happened to this little town. Again, I've been to the thing and I'm like, where is the toxic chemicals? Why aren't they toxic? No, and it's like, it's so I want you to watch it. There's a whole bunch of videos on it out there. The other thing that's going to happen with the DDT site here, as soon as I get permission to show it, Rachel Carson's, there's a whole documentary from American Experience, which is from PBS. I'm waiting for the permission to be able to have you guys watch it. This will be a video you guys can watch. This will take a place of a lecture for the days next week as soon as I get permission for it. I've requested the to be able to show it, and then it'll be on Canopy. And you guys will be able to then watch this and get a little bit more in depth besides just reading Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. You can learn a lot more about her and her experiences, which I think is really important for you to understand, you know, a lot of different issues, these very wicked problems of compounding, you know, toxic chemicals, gender issues, backlash from chemical companies. Everything kind of comes together in this, and what comes out of this is our current Environmental Protection Agency and our environmental laws. So this is a really big turning point in American history, is the 1960s and this. So when this video here becomes available, I'll put it up on Blackboard. This will be, like I said, it's an hour long, so I'll use this as one of my lectures. So you won't get this plus more. I don't want you to do that. Okay, so that is it for what to watch. I will do the homework assignment here on how to use ill water. I'll make that a separate assignment and everything like that. But right now, this is just your pesticides, your herbicides. Watch the video on Times Beach. And hopefully, when you guys start gardening and in here, you have a little bit more understanding about some of these environmental toxins.